Good day everyone, I am Micaela Joyce Guzman and today we will present and discuss about the grammar sequencing or how to sequence grammar. In grammatical sequencing or grammar studies, some sentences are simpler and therefore easier than others. We deal with this notion when we studied simple versus compound or complex sentences in our subject last school year, which is the structure of grammar. For example, the first sentence is a simple sentence, while the second sentence is a complex sentence. And from the given examples, we can see how the sequence in each sentence progress from simple to more complex. It was illustrated that a more important aspect of language than grammatical structure exists, and that is sequencing. But there are also practical choices in grammar sequencing. Some teachers make up their own sequence taking materials from several books while the other follow the sequencing of a particular syllabus. But according to the author of the Grammar Nerds Tell All, How to Sequence Grammar Instruction, the best way to begin on how to sequence a grammar is to start with a pretest, which features questions that cover all grammatical concepts. And from that, he can easily figure out what needs to focus more based on the result of the pretest. And one of the best way to begin in sequencing a grammar is the 8 parts of a speech. We already discussed about the 8 parts of a speech in our English subject last school year, so I will just read the meaning of each. There are 8 parts of a speech in English language, namely noun, pronoun, verb, adjective, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and interjection. The part of a speech indicates how the word functions in meaning as well as grammatically within the sentence, and individual word can function as more than one part of a speech when used in different circumstances. And understanding the parts of a speech is essential for determining the correct definition of a word when using the dictionary. So first is noun. A noun is the name of a person, place, thing, or idea. Second is pronoun. A pronoun is a word used in place of a noun. For example is she, we, they, it, and etc. Next is a verb. A verb expresses action or being. For example is jump, write, and etc. Next is adjective. An adjective modifies or describes a noun or pronoun. For example is pretty, old, blue, smart. And the adjective in the example is the young. Next is adverb. An adverb modifies or describes a verb, an adjective, or another verb, or another adverb. The sixth part of his speech is the preposition. A preposition is a word placed before a noun or pronoun to form a phrase modifying another word in the sentence. The seventh part of his speech is the conjunction. A conjunction joins words, phrases, or clauses, and the last is the interjection. An interjection is a word used to express strong emotion. Uh, Another way to sequence, or another best way to sequence a grammar is through the subjects and the predicates. Simple subject. A simple subject is a subject that has one noun or pronoun as the focus of the sentence. This means that only one noun or pronoun does the action or connects to the verb of the sentence. For example, the hungry fox darted across the yard. Here, the complete subject is the hungry fox. There are two more words like like the, and hungry that modify the main subject, which is the word fox. So fox is the simple subject. Next is simple predicate. The simple predicate is the verb or verbs that are connected to the subject. A predicate can also have many words. It also has a main part, which is the simple predicate. So, for example, the hungry fox darted across the yard. Here, the simple predicate is just the verb darted instead of darted across the yard. The complete Next is the complete subject. A complete subject is all of the words that tell what or whom a sentence discusses, including any modifiers. And the complete subject is the simple subject and all the words that describe or explain it. For example, the mangy old dog limped down the alley. In this sentence, the dog is doing the verb limp. Modifiers to dog include the mangy old. So, the mangy old dog is the complete subject. The complete predicate. A complete predicate consists of both the verb of a sentence and the words around it. The words that modify the verb and complete its meaning. For example, he ran a long way. In this sentence, he is the subject, run is the verb of the sentence, and a simple predicate would just be the verb run. We are looking for a complete predicate here. So, a complete predicate is going to be all the words that modify and further describe the verb. So, run a long way is the complete predicate in this sentence. Generally, all the words that come after the verb are going to be part of the predicate. That's not always true, but generally, you can determine the predicate that way. Next is the subject complement. Direct object is the receiver of the action mentioned in the sentence. John hit the ball. The direct object is the ball because it is the receiver of the action mentioned in the sentence, which is the hit. Next is indirect object. Indirect object usually a person or a thing. The indirect object identifies the person or a thing for whom or what the action of the verb is performed. The indirect object is usually a person of or a thing. For example, my mother bought me a necklace. The indirect object is me and the direct object is necklace. Another example is John told Peter a story. The indirect object is Peter and the direct object is the story. Next is the predicate nominative. The predicate nominative is a noun or pronoun that follows a linking verb and points back to the subject to rename it or identify it further. For example is, Mrs. Frey is my English teacher. Teacher is the predicate nominative and English is not a predicate adjective but just a regular adjective. Next is predicative adjective or predicate adjective. It follows a linking verb and points back to the subject and further describes it. For example, Mrs. Frey is weird. Weird is the predicate adjective. And last, subject complements is a term for predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. Next is the appositives. We may not realize it, but we use appositive noun phrases every day to provide more detail in our sentences. Appositives are two nouns that work together where one identifies or further defines the other. So, what is an appositive? An appositive is a noun or a noun phrase that renames the noun next to it. It serves the purpose of adding information about another noun. For example, consider the phrase or the sentence, "The boy raced ahead to the finish line." Adding an appositive noun phrase could result in, "The boy, an avid sprinter, raced ahead to the finish line." The sentence is still complete without the appositive. However, adding the appositive, "an avid sprinter," presents more information about the other noun, which is the boy. Why is knowing the different parts of speech, subjects and predicates, and subject complements important? Because these are important because in the grammar of any language, they function as building blocks for grammar, especially in the linguistic area of syntax. In fact, whereas grammar serves as the blueprint of languages, it also depends heavily on the various parts of speech, subjects and predicates and subject complement for the semantic expressions, both oral and written. These are also like the lifeblood of a typical language in that a lack of an array of appropriate words representing parts of speech would render the spoken or written words meaningless. Also, parts of speech are the necessary ingredients to create intelligible phrases, clauses, and sentences in the area of syntax and syntactic functions. As a result, one's lack of grammar proficiency would hinder one from functioning or expressing oneself in formal or academic writing. It enhances the grammar repertoire and competence of a person who wants to get by successfully in the oral and spoken forms of the grammar of a typical language. The next topics would be discussed by Miss Anna Marie.
Okay, so to continue our discussion, let's move on to types of phrases. But before that, let us define first what is phrase. Phrase is a group of words in a sentence that does not have a subject nor a verb. It cannot express a complete thought on its own. Why? Because it does not have a subject and a verb. So let's move on to types of phrases. First is prepositional phrase. When we say prepositional phrase, it can function as an adverb, adjective, or a noun, but it starts with a preposition. A prepositional phrase consists of a preposition and a verb. So when we say preposition, it is used before a noun, pronoun or gerund to show place, time, direction in a sentence. Example of a preposition is at, in, on, about, and etc. And verb is an action word like walk, see, look, and etc. Example of a prepositional phrase. On the road. On is the preposition and road is a noun. Therefore, the prepositional phrase functions as a noun. Remember, a prepositional phrase will never contain the subject of a sentence. So next is appositive phrase. It is a group of words consisting of an appositive and its modifiers. It appears beside a noun or a pronoun. Like for example, Larry the plumber fixed the sink. In this example, the plumber is an appositive. Why? Because it further identifies the word Larry, which is noun. Next is verbal phrase. It composed of a verb and words that modify the verb. When a word that look like a verb really function as a different part of speech in a sentence, it is called verbal. A verbal is a verb form that does not function as a verb. Verbals function as a noun, adjective, or adverbs, and verb is a word used to describe an action, state, or occurrences. There are three types of verbal phrase. First is infinitive phrase. It is the infinitive form of a verb plus any complements and modifiers. For example, Sam likes to eat. It seems that eat is just a verb, but when it's with the word to, the two words together are telling us what Sam likes to do. Another example, I want to bury the treasure quickly. The infinitive form is to bury, and treasure is the complement, function as a direct object, and quickly is the modifier, function as an adverb. The complement of an infinitive verb will often be its direct object, and the modifier will often be an adverb. They all make up the infinitive phrase. Another type of verbal is participial phrase. It is a group of words consisting of a participle and the modifier and or nouns, pronouns, or noun phrases that function as the direct objects, indirect objects, or complements of the action or state expressed in the participle. A participle is a word ending in ing or in ed that helps describe something. Example, the receiver made a diving catch. Let's take a look at this. Shouldn't diving be a verb? It sounds like an action. In this example, diving describes the word catch, so it's an adjective. Example of a participial phrase. Removing his pants, Ron jumped into the water to save the child. So the participial phrase there is removing his pants. The participial phrase function as an adjective, modifying Ron. Removing is the participle. His pants is the direct object of an action expressed in participle. So, the third type of phrase is the gerund phrase. It is a phrase consisting of a gerund and any modifiers or objects associated with it. A gerund is a noun made from a verb root plus ing, a present participle. Example of a gerund ending in ing. You can learn a lot from studying. So, the gerund there is studying. It can also be in phrase. For example, Laura enjoyed vacationing in Michigan. Vacationing in Michigan is the gerund phrase. So, to review, a phrase is a group of words that function as a single part of speech. A phrase doesn't have a subject and a verb, so it's never a complete sentence. And the three types of phrase are prepositional phrase, appositive phrase, and verbals and verb phrases. To conclude, it is not necessary for the most part to know the difference between all the types of phrases. It is important to know what phrases are because many punctuation rules are based on being able to identify phrases and clauses. And that's all for my topic. Thank you for listening. And to continue the discussion, may I call on Miss Rhea May Dakiwag.
Hello everyone, I am Rhea Dakiwag and I'm going to discuss clauses. So why teach clauses after phrases? Because if you teach phrases first, it is more clear to students what the difference is when you tell them that a clause must have a subject and a verb, but a phrase does not. A phrase is a group of two or more words that work together but don't form a clause. For example, she laughs at shy people. She laughs is a clause and that shy people is a phrase that complements the clause and complete the sentence. They're both fragments, grammatical structures that cannot stand on their own. In teaching clauses, we have to memorize first the subordinating conjunctions in order for us to easily analyze a sentence and definitely say that a group of words is a dependent clause. So what is subordinating conjunction? Subordinating conjunctions connects a dependent clause to an independent clause. They can be at the beginning or in the middle of a sentence. Subordinating conjunctions such as after, although, because, whether, whenever, while, etc. Next, we are now going to discuss dependent clause. Dependent clause, also known as subordinate clause, is a clause that has both a subject and a verb, but is not a complete sentence and does not express a complete thought. It depends upon an independent clause, one that can stand on its own as a complete sentence to form a complete idea. Some examples of dependent clause include because I was upset while he waited at the train station. You can see that each of these clauses has a noun and a verb, but they also have an additional word, which is the subordinating conjunctions because and while, which makes the clause feel incomplete. These clauses must be attached to an independent clause to be a part of a complete sentence. For example, while he waited at the train station, Joe realized that the train was late. Now that we know about subordinating conjunctions, dependent clauses, and independent clauses, we move on to relative pronouns and relative clauses. Relative pronouns are used to introduce relative clauses. Relative pronouns such as who, which, that, where, whom, whose, why, what, when. While relative clauses are used to say which person or thing we are talking about or give extra information. There are two types of relative clauses. First is the defining relative clause. Defining relative clause identifies the noun to which the relative pronoun refers. It explains which person or which thing. They are not separated from the rest of the sentence by commas. For example, I called my brother who lives in Ontario. Means I have more than one brother and I called the one that lives in Ontario. Next is non-defining relative clause. Non-defining relative clause gives extra information about a noun that has already identified. It is separated from the rest of the sentence with commas. For example, my brother who lives in Ontario is older. Means I have only one brother and I'm just mentioning that he lives in Ontario. Going back to relative pronouns joins clauses. The type of relative pronoun used depends on what kind of noun is being described. Who refers to a person as the verb's subject. Example, the woman who came to the door left flowers for you. Whom refers to a person as the verb's object. I am not sure whom this book belongs to. Which refers to an animal or thing. Interpretative dance, which I find a bit disconcerting, is all the rage. What refers to a non-living thing. Is this what you are talking about? That refers to a person, animal, or thing. She finally visited the coffee shop that had such great reviews. Possessive relative pronouns. Whose is a relative pronoun. Whose relates to people but can also be used for animals and things. For example, she apologizes to the boy whose glasses got broken. The house whose owner is on vacation has an unsightly garden. The students whose exam grades were excellent are having a celebratory party tonight. Compound relative pronouns. Compound relative pronouns apply universally to a number of people or things. They include whoever, whomever, whichever, and whatever. Please tell whoever may call that I am not available. Whomever you hire will be fine with me. Whichever train you take from here, you will end at Charing Cross Station. Carly will be successful at whatever she chooses to do in life. Now that we are already familiar with the clauses, we are now ready to move on to identifying sentences type. Is it necessary for students to be able to identify sentences types? Yes, it is, because the more students can understand grammatical elements, the better writers they will be. Sentences types. In creating a sentence, we must first know what fragments are. Fragments are simply grammatically incomplete sentences. They are phrases and dependent clauses. They cannot stand on their own. For example, because of the rain. On its own, because of the rain doesn't form a complete thought. It leaves us wondering what happened because of the rain. To complete it, we need further explanation. For example, because of the rain, the party was cancelled. Now, the fragment has become a dependent clause attached to a sentence that has a subject, the party, and the verb was cancelled. Our thought is now complete. Next type of sentences is run-ons. Run-ons will be reported by our next reporter, Ms. Raquel Aledaño.
Alright, so good afternoon everyone. I am Raquel and my topic is all about sentence type or sentence error. So Miss Dakiwag discussed fragments and now let's proceed to number 2, which is fuse or run-on sentences.
Alright, so good afternoon everyone. I am Raquel and my topic is all about sentence type or sentence error. Miss Dakiwag discussed already what is fragment. So now, let's proceed to number 2, which is fuse or run-on sentences. Okay, let me define first. Fuse or run-on sentences occur when two or more independent clauses are connected improperly. When we say independent clauses kasi, it is a simply or a complete sentence, meaning it can stand by itself as a simple sentence. Okay, so let's see the example. You were Romeo, you were throwing pebbles. As you can see there, we have two independent clauses. The first independent clause is you were Romeo, you were throwing pebbles, it's the second one. So makikita natin sa example ay merong dalawang independent clause na pinagsama na wala man lang kadugtong or wala man lang conjunction na naghiwalay sa kanila. Yun ay matatawag na run-on sentence. Okay, so next, another type of sentence error is comma splice. So what is comma splice? A comma splice occurs when a comma is used to separate two independent clauses. So what is the difference between run-on sentences and comma splice? When we say run-on sentences, yun yung dalawang pinagdugtong na independent clause na walang kahit na anong conjunction. While comma splice is a kind of run-on sentences which is yung dalawang independent clause are pinagtugtong sa mamamagitan ng comma pero mali yung pagkakagamit. So take a look with the example. You were Romeo, comma, you were throwing pebbles. So yung ganyang pagkakagawa pala is mali. So ngayon ko lang nalaman na yung sa paggawa ko pala ng essay, minsan kasi kapag naghihiwalay ako, talagang ginagamit ko yung comma para sa ganyan. Pero ngayon nalaman ko na yun pala isang type ng sentence error, ang comma splice. Okay, so how we are going to fix this? Paano ba natin naayusin ang run-on sentence at comma splice? So I have prepared two options. First is plus conjunction and second is comma turn into semicolon. So sa first option, ganito yung kalalabasan. Independent clause plus coordinator or yung conjunction plus independent clause again. So okay, so yung conjunction, halimbawa nito, may ginawa ako. So narito yung mga ilan or common use na conjunction. Nakuha ko to sa YouTube channel ni Miss Laika. So fun boys para mas madali nating ma-memorize or ma-recall, which is fun boys stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So, ito yung mga halimbawa, yung mga common na nagagamit na conjunction. So, punta na tayo sa example 1 kung paano ba natin aayusin yung isang fuse, run-on sentence, or comma splice. Okay, so yung unang example, you were Romeo, comma, you were throwing pebbles is an example of comma splice. So, paano natin itatama? Using conjunction. So, ang gagawin lang natin is i-determine lang natin kung ano ba yung fit or pwede dun sa sentence na idadagdag na conjunction. Like for example, dito sa you were Romeo, you were throwing pebbles. So, ano ba yung dapat nating gamitin? So, first, tignan muna natin kung ano ba yung sentence. So, dito sa first independent clause and dito sa second independent clause, iisa lang yung tinutukoy, which is Romeo. So, anong idadagdag natin na conjunction is and. Tapos, ang magiging form niya, so, ganyan na nga. You were Romeo, tapos yung comma, tapos yung dinagdag natin na conjunction, and you were throwing pebbles. So, yan na. So, dito sa pangalawang example, yan na yung tama. Yan na yung kung paano natin naayusin yung error na yon. Alright, so let's proceed to option 2 on how to fix run-on and comma splice. Yung comma ay gagawin lang natin is semicolon. So, yun. So, halimbawa, dun sa first example, yung comma, iti-turn lang into semicolon. So, sa pamamagitan yan, magiging tama na yung sentence mo. Okay, next type of sentence error is choppy sentences. When we say choppy sentences, it occurs when there are too many short sentences in a row, and this can make your writing sound very disjointed or disconnected. Okay, so how are we going to fix these choppy sentences? So first is combine sentences with conjunction. As what I've said a while ago, we can use conjunction, example yung fan voice. So, titignan lang natin yung sentence kung ano ba yung dapat na idugtong dun sa bawat independent clause. Okay, so next proceed to the example of choppy sentence. She took dance classes. She had no natural grace or sense of rank. She eventually gave up the idea of becoming a dancer. So, makikita natin paulit-ulit na ginagamit yung the word she. So, anong gawin natin? How to revise it or how to fix it? So, revise, she took dance classes, but, dinagdagan niya ng but, she had no natural grace or sense of freedom. So is another type of conjunction. So, she eventually gave up the idea of becoming a dancer. So, sa pamamagitan yan, may tatama natin yung choppy sentences using conjunction. Okay, let's move on to another type of sentence error, which is string sentences. A string sentences is a sentence that is usually difficult to read and understand because it has too many clauses, often due to an overuse of coordinating and or subordinating conjunction. So, ibig sabihin naman nito is an overuse of coordinating, like yung but or and ganun. So, they rumble on and on para lang mapadami yung sentence, which is mali. Right, so how we are going to avoid these string sentences? Okay, so all we need to do is to break the sentence into 2 or more sentences. But take note, we should know or we should aware on the sentence structure bago natin siya ayusin. Okay, let's proceed to the example. My best friend's name is Shane and she lives next door, and so we do many things together. Okay, so as we can see on the example, overuse ng conjunction, di ba? Meron siyang isa and dalawa. Merong pang so doon sa sentence, which is ang dami niyang nagamit na conjunction. Okay, so paano natin to aayusin? So, yun nga, yung break the sentence into 2 or more sentence. So, yung my best friend name is Shane. So, isang sentence na yon. And she lives next to the door. Isang sentence na ulit. And so, we do many things together. Isang sentence na ulit. So, ganun lang yung gagawin natin sa string sentence. I-break lang natin yung mga alam na nating complete sentence. Sa ganun ay may ayos natin yung string sentence. Okay, so that is the end of sentence error or sentence. So, in conclusion, avoiding sentence errors such as run-ons, comma splicing, choppy, and stringy sentences will make your writing much clearer and more interesting. It is important because it allows or enable the communication to be readable and easy to understand. So, thank you. Now, our next speaker is Miss May Sugpatan.
There are another types of sentences, and these are simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and compound complex sentence, and I'm going to discuss these one by one. First is the simple sentence, and simple sentence has one independent clause, and as you can see in the given example, Tom reads novels. So there is a subject, a verb, and it is a complete thought. And the punctuation note that we should understand in this part is that no commas separate two compound elements in a simple sentence. The second type of sentence is compound sentence. So when we say compound sentence, it has two independent clauses joined by first coordinating conjunction, B, conjunctive of verb, and third one is the semicolon. And as you can see in the example, the first example, Tom reads novels but Jack reads comics. So there are two independent clauses and there is coordinating conjunction but given in that first example. Second one is Tom reads novels, however Jack reads comics. So there are also two independent clauses and there is a conjunctive adverb use which is however. And the third one, Tom reads novels, his friend reads comics. So there is a semicolon. There is the presence of semicolon in the third examples and there are also two independent clauses. So that explains the second type of sentence. The third type of sentence is complex sentence. So when we say complex sentence, it has one dependent clause joined to an independent clause. So for example, although Tom reads novels, Jack reads comics. So based on that example, there are two clauses which is dependent clause and independent clause. The dependent clause in that sentence is although Tom reads novels because it is not a complete thought. On the other hand, Jack reads comics is the independent clause. So we should remember that complex sentence has independent clause and dependent clause. Last is compound complex sentence. So this type of sentence has two independent clauses joined to one or more dependent clauses. For example, while Tom reads novels, Jack reads comics, but Sam reads only magazines. So based on this example, there are two independent clauses and one dependent clause. So while Tom reads novel is the dependent clause, Jack read comics is independent clause, and Sam reads only magazines is also independent clause. So there is the presence of coordinating conjunction but. And compound complex sentence is merely the combination of the two, the compound sentence and the complex sentence. That ends the four types of sentences. So why we need to understand the different types of sentences? It is because sentences are the most important things to learn. Because if you learn sentences, you will also learn words and shows you how these words are being used. And it is necessary for students to be able to identify sentences types because more students can understand about grammatical elements, and through this they will become better writers. So that's all. Thank you for listening. I'm Maybe Sugbatan, your reporter, and Miss Repisora will discuss the next topics.
Good day, everyone. I am Marijoy Pira Pisora, your speaker. Let's move to a more advanced topic. First, correlative conjunctions. Correlative conjunctions are pairs of words that correlate two equally important clauses or phrases in one complete thought. It includes pairs such as both, and, either or, neither no, not both, not only, but also. It confuses students to attempt to teach all four conjunctions in their own unit. They have to be well versed in other grammatical elements in order to understand them. We have here some examples. First example, I want either the cheesecake or the chocolate cake. The first sentence shows the use of either or. Second sentence, the company deals in both hardware and software. The use of both and. And the third sentence, Nathalie likes neither milk nor cream cake. It shows the use of neither nor. And next, advanced punctuations. Understanding how, when, and why to use dashes, hyphens, parentheses, ellipses, commas, semicolons, colons, and quotation marks will empower students to take their writing to new heights. Let me introduce to you the use of semicolon, dashes, and colon. First, semicolon. Link with independent ideas together. They could be two sentences. Example, he sailed the 7 seas. He was the captain of Jolly Roger. We can see the use of semicolon in this sentence. Colon. Colon is used to diffuse and we can use it to introduce a list. We have here some example that contains colon. The shop has pens, pencils, papers. We can use colon to link another phrase or clause. Next, dash. We can use it to add on another clause or phrase. Dashes are used to separate group of words used to indicate a range or a pause. We have here some example that contain dashes. The pirate is fierce. He was undefeated. Moving forward to the next, misplaced and dangling modifiers. Misplaced are the most common modifier mistakes. Both terms refer to modifiers that are connected to the wrong thing in a sentence. Misplaced modifier is too far away from the thing it's supposed to modify, while dangling modifier's intended subject is missing from the sentence altogether. Misplaced and dangling modifiers are both refers to modifiers that are connected to the wrong thing in a sentence. It is a misplaced modifier if a modifier is positioned too far away from the word, phrase, or clause, and it is intended to modify. Let's take a look on the example of misplaced modifier. The waiter presented a steak to the guest that was medium rare. To fix it, the sentence would be, the waiter presented a medium rare steak to the guest, and it could be, the waiter presented a steak that was medium rare to the guest. In this example, the misplaced modifier implies that the guest was a medium rare. Moving the modifier correctly indicates that it was the steak that was medium rare. We have also here example of dangling modifier. Fumbling in her purse, the keys could not be found. To fix the dangling modifier, the sentence should be, fumbling in her purse, she could not find the keys. Or, as she fumbled in her purse, the keys could not be found. In this example, the subject who was fumbling in purse is not stated, so it seems like the keys were doing the fumbling. A dangling modifier like this can be fixed either by rewriting the main clause in active voice or by revising the introductory phase. That ends our first semester. How to sequence grammar. Let's move to second semester. According to Laurel from Language Art Classroom, she presented 4 instructions on how to sequence grammar in second semester. After discussing the different ways on how to sequence grammar in the first semester, they've prepared instructions in second semester, and it's all about application. First, lay the groundwork. Start by laying groundwork and relating the concept of grammar to other ideas. Ask students what they want to do in college and as a career. Explain that students will study for these tests and that prepping for a test is not necessarily a bad thing. Laying the groundwork means we should prepare a test for them to evaluate the outcome of their learning. That ends my part, and before Samkei Tamayo will continue the topic, please raise your questions regarding on the topics that I've discussed. If none, let's move to the next speaker.
Good day everyone, I am Samkei Tamayo, your speaker. Marijoy Reposora discussed about lay the ground, and our next topic is cover the basic. Choosing an ordered topic in grammar instructions according to the author. The author of the module tells us that we should always begin with the basic. The sequence of basic grammar rules could be slightly altered in order to help prevent intermediate students from making beginner mistakes with basic grammar skills. The reason why we need to cover the basic is for us to know the basic parts or concepts of grammar, which is very helpful when we are going to learn the hardest part or concept of grammar. Next is encourage students. One of the role of a teacher is to encourage students. Studying grammar is one of the hardest, but by the best strategies we create as a teacher, we'll be able to make our students interested in studying grammar. Some of us know that studying grammar is boring, and some of us, during high school, naboboring po tayo kapag English subject na yung pinag-aaralan. Bukod sa mahirap na, nakakaantok pa. Pero we should encourage students that grammar is not that boring but interesting. The teacher thinks some games or activities to make this class more enjoyable. Like for example, use games. Get students to move, like keep students more awake and focus their attention on the lesson. Another one is use group activities like role plays, discussion, symposium, like that. And another one is use conversation sessions. Next is practice key concepts. Take practice tests so we can gauge what we need to review. Sometimes we review them. Sometimes the concepts are more advanced, understanding the best transitions or organizing sentences in paragraph. Try to set the students up to succeed. This allows them to encourage and make test preparation more achievable and prevents them from quitting because they never see growth. Every teacher have that practical choices. It means it depends upon the teacher on what he or she will use for sequencing grammar. Some teachers ay nagbibase sa iba't ibang textbooks or learning materials, while the others are following their syllabus. Pero according sa author na sinunod namin on how to sequence grammar, usually it is started by giving pre-test, which covers all grammar concepts. Then kung ano yung result ng test, doon siya magfo-focus kung ano yung pwedeng improve. Ultimately, figuring out how to sequence grammar instruction is a process of trial and error. But we are educators. It's always beneficial to put our heads together and share triumphs and failures, working together to better our instruction for our students' benefit and growth.